person comes from his name. That we all agree. But it comes from the name if he's called by the name. If he's not called by the name, then he doesn't get the personality of the name. So, like I said, so that's known. You ever hear some idea like that? No?
Well, I'm Tzvi. I notice you call everybody by their full names.
I try to.
Yes, I've been noticing that. You're the only one that does it. So I guess this is why.
Yeah, that now you see why.
Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky does it too.
Shmuel does it too.
That's why he only gives his children one name, so he won't be harder to forget.
Somebody sent me a WhatsApp from Rabbi Yisrael Besser.
I saw that. Yeah,
You saw that story? Is that a phenomenal
it's
story?
an amazing story.
And if you know Rabbi Shmuel, it's very typical of him.
Yeah.
That's something you can't do typically because you don't do something like that every day. But in general, the control that he has over his emotion and his focus on helping others, it's incredible. Okay. Today is the yahrzeit of the Rashash. And the Rashash was a big makubal.
Oh, that Rashash.
Well, yeah, is that not the same person?
No.
Oh, it's a different Rashash?
Oh, very different. Rashash from the Gemara was in Vilna.
Oh.
Rashash
Oh, so it's that Rashash. So the story goes is that when he came to Eretz Yisrael, he just acted as a shamus. He wanted to be able to learn Kabbalah. He knew Kabbalah, but he wanted to engage more in Kabbalah. So he took a job as a shamus in the shul where they taught Kabbalah, and the yeshiva they taught Kabbalah, and the yeshiva's name was, I think, Rav Gavril. I don't remember what his last name was, but it was Rav Gavril. And what he would do is he would be draying sich in the Bismillah all day, and he heard that they were struggling to understand a shtickle Kabbalah. There was a shtickle Kabbalah that the Rashiv himself wasn't sure about. And he listened, but he didn't say anything because he would make believe like he was just cleaning up. And then what he did is at night, when everyone was gone, he took a piece of paper and he wrote in it the explanation to whatever they were learning with a clarkite. And he left it in the sefer in that page. And the next day, the Rashiv would come in and he would see what's going on. He would see Pshat and he would be blown away, but he didn't know who wrote it. And his name was Rav Gedalia. He didn't know who wrote it. So this went on many days until one day his daughter was in the Bishmash cleaning up, whatever it was, after hours, and she caught the Rashash, so she told her father. And then when her father found out, her father told him, now you have to be Megal yourself. You're becoming Rashiva and I'm becoming a Talmud. And that's what happened. It's also a Lubavitch yahrzeit. It's the Rebbetzin and Rivka Schneerson. I don't know whose wife she was, but it's her yahrzeit today. And if I'm not mistaken, there's another Lubavitch yahrzeit that's coming up maybe tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow there's another Lubavitch yahrzeit. It was Chusam Yogan Aleinu Al Kol Yisrael. Is your light on purpose?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I thought you just tried to blind me. Okay. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. We did it already, but we'll quickly run through it again because that's of course the topic of the Gemara. With Pesach, Korin b'Parshas Moados. On Pesach, we learned the Parshas Shel Toras Kahanim because we know it's mentioned both in Emor and it's in Re'eh. So this is the one in Emor that we learned. Batzeres Shiva Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah. B'chodesh Hashvi, B'echad L'chodesh, Yom Kippurim is Achri Mois, B'yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag, Korim b'Parshas Moados, Shabbat Toras Kahanim. Again, the same thing that they learned on the first day of Pesach. V'shar Kol Yomos Echad, and the rest of the days of Sukkot b'Karbonos Echad. B'Chanukah, b'Nesiyim, b'Purim, they learn. B'Chanukah b'Nesiyim, and b'Purim b'Yav Amalek, Rosh Chodashim, Rosh Chodshechem. B'may Modos is the Ma'aseh Bereshis. B'Tainiyos. Now we're on Lamed Aleph. Lamed Aleph is Brachos U'Klalos. Zok to Mishnah. Ein mafsikin the klalos. You don't stop on aliyah by the klalos. Rather, you go right through. Echad kairas kula. B'sheni u'b'chamishi and b'shabbos u'mincha, current kisidron. They lay in the regular parshas Shavua, but the ein oilam lahem and acheshben. That doesn't count. In other words, you cannot skip that or start from Sheni when you lay on Shabbos. Shenemar, how do you know that all the kriyos have to be similar to the inyan of the Yoma? Is because it says V'yidaber Moshe Ma'ad Hashem al b'nei Yisrael mitzvason shehu koyin kol echad ve'echad b'zmanoi. The mitzvah is to do the laning that's appropriate for the day. Tanu Rabban, the Pesach koyin b'parshus Mayados. They lay the parshus Mayados maftirin the Pesach Gilgal. They're mafter in the Haftarah that talks about Pesach Gilgal. Va'idna, and nowadays begolios, the ikatrei where there's 2 days of Pesach. There's 2 first days. So Yom Kama, the first day of Pesach, we lay in the Haftarah of Pesach Gilgal. On the second day of Pesach, the Pesach Yoshio. But the laning is the same laning for both days. Zok to the Gemara weiter. V'shar Yemosha Pesach, and the rest of the days of Pesach and Chalamoid, Malaket v'koyrei minyan shel Pesach. They pick different kapitlach in the Torah that refer to Pesach. Mahi, what are the different kriyas that we do on Chalamoid Pesach? Amar Papa, you could remember them with the word Mapai. Mem Aleph Peva, Simon. Yom Tov and I believe Rashi goes through what they are. So Rashi says, so the first is the mem mishchu ukuchula chem tzon. Aleph is in kesef talva es ami. Pei is psolocha. Vayidaber shiva v'aloischa. And then the vav stands for vayidaber v'aloischa. Yom Tov sheni karin kiyom rishon. And what we lay on the second day of Yom Tov is exactly the same kriya that we do on the first day of Yom Tov, Shara Kesef. Yom Tov Achan Shal Pesach. What are we laying on the last day of Pesach? Karin Vayi B'Shalach. We read the Parsha of Torah, and Rashi says, "L'fisha b'yoyim zayin shal Pesach amur shir layom," because Shvi Shal Pesach is the day that we said shir. That was the day of Kriyas Yam Suf. Vayi B'Shalach Maftirin Vayidaber. Vayidaber David. Vayidaber David Rashi says he shira kamoisa was also a shira. Umedaber Bama Yitis Mitzrayim, and it also mentions in that shira Yitis Mitzrayim because there's Allah Hashem Papoy Yishlach Chitza Vayifitza, which is referring to Kriyas Yam Suf. Ulamachar on the last day of Pesach, Kol HaBachar. We read Kol HaBachar. Umaftirin Oid Hayoim Rashi Lafi She Mapalosa Shel Sancherev B'Leil Pesach. Since Sancherev collapsed, his army collapsed on Leil Pesach, so that's why we laid it down. Amar Abaye, Idna, and nowadays, Nog Alma Lemikri Mashach Tura. Nowadays, we read Mashach Tura, which is Shara Kesef, Kadesh, the Kasba, Psal, B'Midvara, Shalach Bucher. So there's a whole different order that we have now. So let's see if we can go through what this order is. Let me see if we have it. Does he bring it down? I think he does bring it down. Okay, so let's see what it says. Idna no gamaluk in Moshe Tura, Kadesh, the Kasba. So Moshe Tura Shai Kesef, Kadesh is Kadesh Tikal Bechar, the Kasba is in Kesef. Talvasami, Psal is Psalachal Shnei Luchos Avadim, right? And then you have B'Midbara, B'Midbara Shlach Bucha. So that's Kol HaBachar. So that's Kol HaBachar. But Seres on Shavuos we read Shiva Shavuos, Umaftirin b'Chabakuk, and we say the Haftarah in Chabakuk. And Rashi says Shemedaber b'Matan Torah Alakami Teman Yavai, which is referring to Matan Torah. Acher Marim, those who say the Chodesh Hashlishi, we lay the parsha, we lay the Haftarah b'Chodesh Hashlishi. I'm sorry, we lay the parsha b'Chodesh Hashlishi. Umaftirin b'Markava, and the Haftarah the Markava. Rashi says of Yecheskel. Al Shem Shenigla b'Sinai b'Riva b'Ravis Al Fashinon. Remember, we had a shaila in the Mishnah before, if you ever read Ma'aser Merkava, but clearly this sheet holds you do read Ma'aser Merkava. But and nowadays, where we have actually 2 days of Shavuos, Yom HaKama, the first day is Kiyesh Amrim, which would be Shiva Shavuos, and Lamachar would be Velakim Nisa Esavram. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. But we do both. But but we flip it around, meaning we do a day quote as the second day on the first, and we day quote on the first day as the second. Rashi is ve'ibcha, the ka'amri acherim, which is what acherim says. They knew basroi l'tanakama. They said the chodesh hashlishi mafter b'merkava. That's what they said on the second day. B'yom harishon karina, who we read it on the first day. So I'm sorry, the ikeda amri, the acherim, who said the second version of what you would read on Shavuos, we read that on the first day. With the Gomer Tanakama, Batseres, Shiva Shavuos, Maftir Bechabakuk, and that the Tanakama says that on one day of Shavuos you would read Shiva Shavuos and have the Torah Bechabakuk. We landed on the second day of Shavuos. Going to be a Masheni, the Ibcha, the Matan Torah, the Ibcha, the Matan Torah, B'Shishi B'Sivan. The reason why we do it that way is because Matan Torah is on the 6th day of Sivan, and therefore we read the Chodesh HaShlishi, the first day of Shavuos, because we want to read the Parsha of Matan Torah on the 6th day of Sivan, which is when Matan Torah occurred. The Rosh Hashanah, what do we do on Rosh Hashanah? The Gemara b'Chodesh Hashvi el Maftirin haben Yakir Ephraim, and Rashi says the reason why we like the Haftarah that talks about haben Yakir Ephraim is because it says Zachar Eskirenu and Racham Acharenu. It talks about things that we want to talk about Hashem remembering us for good and having Rahman to us. V'Yeshoimrim we learn Vashem Pokar Asara. Umaftirin b'Chana, and we say the Haftarah of the story of Chana, and Rashi says because Chana's Pekida, Chana got answered to be able to have a child on Rosh Hashanah. And as well as Nakedes Yitzchak, which is also by Shem Plaka. Now that we have 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, we have room for both opinions. Yom HaKama is Kiyesh Shaimin, the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we learn Vashem Pakat, and Lamachar, and the second day, for the Knesset Avram, that's when we learn the Akedah, Umaftir and Haben Yakir. And I always have my kasha that I ask every year, why is it that on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we don't mention the Akedah? We talk about the Akedah of Sarah, as well as the story of Avram throwing out Hagar and Ishmael, and we only learn the Akedah on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, which is a little bit schwer because the Akedah is like the pinnacle of Rosh Hashanah. We want Hashem to remember Akedah Yitzchak. Rab Shimon Schwab is a beautiful word as the importance of the Parsha of Yishmael, because that's where we learn that Hashem judges us Basher Husham. Yishmael undid everything that Avram tried to do. So Avram brought in many Balei Tshuva. He brought many people to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Yishmael completely undid that by saying that Me'avimelech nis Abra Sarah, and tried to portray his father as a fraud. So he mamish messed up Avram Avinu's legacy. And then he found himself, he was claiming Me'avram nis Abra Sarah, meaning that Yitzchak was of illegitimate beginnings. What happened? He found himself abandoned in the desert with no water, with nothing. Mamash and a Sufi, an abandoned child. So he found himself in the same condition that he was trying to project on Yitzchak. And that's when it hit him that he's getting a punishment, Midah Keneged Midah. And because of that, it woke him up and he said, Rebbeinu Shalom, I accept my Midah Keneged Midah. That was his tshuva, and that was the Basher Husham that the Rebbeinu Shalom accepted him as.
Wow, tough love. I didn't believe in that.
So we're telling the Rebbeinu in Kavadim and Kavadim, our Im Kavadim is, if we're already going to get punished, we should be zoichet to appreciate the justice in your gzeira, and we should be zoichet to see the midah keneged midah in our challenges, and therefore we should have a kapara. That's why we read Vashem Pokar Asara the first day of Rosh Hashanah. I had a much better pshat, much better pshat, and that is very simple. Is that we know that the most important thing required to continue Klal Yisrael is chinuch, because unless we train the next generation in the same Ahavas HaTorah and Yerushalayim of the previous generation, we won't have any continuity. So the Parsha of Hashem Pokat Asara is teaching us about chinuch and the Mesiras Nefesh that a family has to have to be mechanech their children properly. Why? Because it's a week before Sukkot. It's a week before Sukkot, and you see Sari Menu did the greatest act of Mesiras Nefesh that ever occurred in the world. It never happened from Bria Soilim until the time she lived, and this act of Mesiras Nefesh never happened afterwards. It was never to be repeated, and that is Sarah Imenu fired her goita a week before Sukkot. That's something that will never ever happen. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. Uve Mincha, am so b'Yom Kippurim, Karin Achri Mois, Maftirin Kikoy Amar Ram Vanisa, and Rashi tells us, V'Amar Soilu Soilu Shebemidbar B'Midis HaTshuva Halei Zetzoymef Hareu. So it says it's referring to the tinus in that pasuk. Uve Mincha Karin Ba'Arayis. We read the Parsha of Arayis. Why we read the Parsha of Arayis is quite interesting. Rashi says, if somebody has Averis in his hand, he will separate himself from those Averis. So Vasab is Arayis, it's a very common Avera. That's why it's important to talk about Arayis on Yom Kippur. Toshva says something very interesting as well. All the women come to shul dressed beautifully on Yom Kippur, all dressed fancy. So you need to remind the men, hey, behave yourselves. Just because the women look so beautiful today, you shouldn't be indulging. Just like Hashem doesn't want us to uncover an erva, we don't want the Rebbeinu Shalom to uncover our erva, uncover our affairs. There are other Shodim who said that we know that Yom Kippur was a big shidduch day. That's when the girls went dancing and the boys watched them, and then they were trying to attract shidduchim. So because of that, we have to read by Rayas, because you should only be there if you have business being there. Otherwise, you shouldn't be there. So that's why we read by Rayas.
This is a place that's totally connected all those women who wear tents and all that nonsense, all that nourish time. Because otherwise, places would just say that the women should stay home. Otherwise, we don't say the women should stay home. They should come to shul, they should dress up beautifully, but we have to tell the men they gotta behave.
That's right. That's right. Umaftirin b'yoina, and maftir by mincha is maftir yoina. Amr b'yochna, kol mokai she'ata moitze gvurasha shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whenever you see the gevura, whenever you see a pasuk that talks about the gevura of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shama moitze an v'sanusa. There you'll find the humility of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Dover zakasa b'Torah. This thing is mentioned in the Torah. I believe we say this in every Motzei Shabbos. We say this in V'yitin Lecha. V'shanu b'neviim u'meshulish b'ksuvim. Kasa b'Torah, it says in the Torah, ki Hashem alakechem hu alakei alokim v'adoinei ha'adoinim, which is talking about the gevura of the Rebbeinu Shalom clearly. Chsiv basrei oisem mishpat yasham v'almana. The Rebbeinu Shalom has time to focus on the individual needs of every yasham and every almana. He deals with the little people, so to speak. Shani b'neviim. The concept is mentioned in Nevi'im. It says Koya Amar Ram Vanisa Sheichanat the Kadosh. It's talking about the gevura of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Chsiv basrei v'sdake u'shval ruach. Hashem focuses on the weak and on the low self-esteem people. Rachel takes care of everybody.
When do we lay arise?
Yom Kippur by Mincha.
So why do we wait for Mincha? Why don't we lay, if that's the reason, then why don't we do it first by Shabbos? Or by Marav the night before, or whatever, to get ready?
In advance.
Yeah.
I guess there's other kriyas that are required before. We don't lay
But
them.
this is mamash by Mincha, like at the end, like already at the end of the day, it's too late. Is it too late? When did the women come? Maybe
Could be after Mincha when they have the break. Maybe they had to break after Mincha. I don't know.
Okay.
Meshulish b'ksuvim. It's mentioned in Ksuvim as well. Praising Hashem who's riding up high. Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag. The first day of Sukkot. What is the Kriya? Karim b'parshas Moed Adishim B'Teres Kaihanim. Umaftirin hine yoim bo lashem. Rashi says the Chsiv Bey lochug es Chag Sukkos because it talks about Sukkot. But Idna nowadays the Ika Trey Yomi we have 2 days of Sukkot. L'machar Mikra Hachanami Karinon. We read the same thing as we read the first day. After my Mafterinon, Bikalu Alamela Shloima, and Rashi's Al Shem, Shechanukas Abayis, Haisa, Ba'isa Sifa, that Asifa was talking about the Chanukas Abayis, B'chaga Sukkos, and that occurred on Sukkos. Okay, Zok to Gemara. Then it says, V'shar Kol Yimei Sachad, and the rest of Sukkos, Karim B'Karbon Sachad. Right, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, Yom Miri, and it's interesting to note, in Chutz La'aretz, where there's a Sveika D'Yoma, so on the first day Chalamoid, which is a Suffolk Sheni, then the Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, Yom Revi. So Rishon gets Yom Sheni, Sheni gets Yom Shlishi, and Yisrael gets Yom Revi, and then the Revi, which is the extra aliyah added because it's Chalamoid, we go back and we learn Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, which is the day of the Suffolk. That's what we do in America. In Eretz Yisrael, where there is no Suffolk, so they lane for all 4 aliyahs, they lane the same thing. Yom Shlishi. Every single aliyah gets the same thing. So it's easier for the Balkari to prepare. He's laying the same parsha 4 times. Yom Tov Ha'achron, the last day of Sukkot, Kairin Kol HaBachar, they lane Kol HaBachar, Mitzvahs V'chukim, which also talks about the mitzvahs of Yom Tov. Rashi says, Kairin Kol HaBachar, Elam Hashem Aschilin, Aser to Aser, we start earlier, the Vishayesh B'Asher Parsha, Mitzvahs V'chukim Harbe, the Pasuk discusses many mitzvahs, Hanahugos, the chag that are relevant. Sukkot time, boitz is man, shuzman osif. That's the time when people gather in their tfuah. The eish aniyim trichin lesoif meichel abeisam is the time where the aniyim need to bring food back to their homes. Void yesh boitz parsha mitzvahs meiser ani umitzvahs nosa and titein ufasayach tiftach v'hanik tanik laeved ivri v'shiluach chavshi v'havei tavitenu. So all of the mitzvahs referring to how we must treat aniyim and take care of aniyim is mentioned there, and that's relevant Sukkot time. That's when people are trying to prepare their provisions for the winter. Beautiful. Umaftirin vayhika chaloy shloima. And Rashi says al shem b'yoyim hashmini shalach hasam, because there it talks about on the 8th day he sent everybody home, and therefore l'chulachem v'alechem, and that was on the 8th day, which is what we're talking about Shmini Atzeres. And for us in Chutz La'aretz, on the 9th day, we lay in V'zois HaBracha, the Simchas Torah, Umaftirin, V'yamid Shloimo. Okay, gewaltig. So the Satmar Rebbe said a beautiful part. We lay on Shmini Atzeres. What do we lay on Shmini Atzeres? Aser to Aser, right? What do they lay in Eretz Yisrael on our day of Shmini Atzeres? It's Simchas Torah. So what do they lay? V'zois HaBracha, right? They lay V'zois HaBracha. So what the Satmar Rebbe been doing in America? Get me to look at the Aser to Aser in Eretz Yisrael. V'zois HaBracha. If we're shelling out the money here, then they're partying in Eretz Yisrael. That's Satmar Rebbe gesagt. Zog to Gemara weiter. Amar Avuna, Amar Rav. Shabbos shechal yois b'chayla shamoid. Shabbos chalamoid. Bein b'Pesach, bein b'Sukkos, Mikra Karinon. What do we read? Rei Ata, which Rashi says sheyesh sham mitzvah Shabbos u'regalim b'chayla shamoid. That talks about Shabbos and the regalim. It's perfect for Shabbos chalamoid. The Chsiv is Chagamatis Tishmar. And Mikan Lamadnu, and from this pasuk we know Isser Meleches Chayla Shamoid b'Meseches Chagiga. In Meseches Chagiga, the Gemara learns up to Isser of Melacha and Chalamoid from this parsha. Okay, the Pesach of Turei. What do we do for that prayer? The Pesach it's Atzomais Hayaveshos, which Rashi says Yotsu Sheitzim Mimshal Fnei Kates, talks about the dry bones that end up experiencing Chismezim. The Sukkot is B'Yom Ba Goig. Rashi V'Hi HaMelchama HaAmur B'Zechariah B'nei Yom Ba'al Hashem. That was the Melchama Shgog HaMogog. The Chanukah B'Nesiyim. On Chanukah they learned in Nesiyim. Umaftirin B'Neres to Zechariah, about the menorah that's described in Zechariah. Rashi says, Rani V'Simchi Al Shem Re'isi Al Shamrisi v'inei menorah zov kula. So it's talking about Zechariah saying nevuah about the menorah. V'mekloi shtei Shabbosos, and if there's 2 Shabbos Chanukahs that year, then Kamaisa Beneris to Zechariah, and Besraisa will be Beneris of Shlomo, which Rashi quotes V'yatzechem Beneris Chomish Memin. It talks about the Beneris that Shlomo Melech made. Before him, Bayovei Amalek, excuse me, Rosh Chodashim, we learn in Rosh Choshechem, Rosh Chodesh Chodesh B'Shabbos, if Rosh Chodesh Chodesh Shabbos Maftirin V'yamidei Chodesh B'Chodshoi, and Chodesh B'Echad B'Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh is on Sunday, then May Esma Maftirin V'Yom Eloyonis on Mocher Chodesh, which is a day talking about tomorrow being Rosh Chodesh, which is a third talking about tomorrow being Rosh Chodesh. Omar Rav Huna, and there are those who I think the Bach takes out Rav Huna's name. Omar, where's the Bach? It's Aleph Omar Rav, right? The Bach scores Omar Rav, and Omar Huna, Rabbi Adjin. Omar Huna, Omar Rav, Rosh Chodesh, Av, Shechol Yosh B'Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh Av falls out on Shabbos, Maftirin, the Haftarah that we say is Chodshechem Umoyadechem. Son and Nafshi, Hayu Alayla Torah. So Hashem is saying that your Rosh Chodesh is I don't like, and it's a tircha for me. My Hayu Alayla Torah. What does it mean? Hayu Alayla Torah. Omar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lo Ydayin Lahen Yisrael Shachaytin Lefanai. It's bad enough that Klai Yisrael does Averis. El Shematrichen Oisi Leida Ezek Zerish Kasha Avi Aleim. You're troubling me now to find a punishment. The Tisha B'Av, Gufei Mai Maftirin. What is the Haftarah of Tisha B'Av? Amrav Eich Ahoyshel Lezoyim. Mikra Mai. Why? What are we laying on Tisha B'Av? Tanya Chermar Im Loisishmuli. It talks about the clothes. Rav Nosson by Yosy Simon Ad Ana Yinatzumi HaAmaseh V'Yeshaymim Ad Mosai LaEda Razois Amar Abaya Idinag Alma LeMikri Kisoyled Banim Ubnei Banim, which is what we actually learn. Umaftirin Asoif Asifim. So we follow what Abaya quotes from here. Zok to Gemara Vayter. B'may Mados. In the Mados, b'may separations. It's very to Gemara Minah Hanami. How do you know that you're supposed to lane the my separation by the Maimonides? Amar Bami il Molei Maimonides. Because if it wasn't for the Maimonides, loy niskaimu shemayim varts. The shemayim varts wouldn't be able to be sustained. Shenemar im loy berisi yoimam velayla. If it's not for keeping my bris yoimam velayla, which is the Torah, chugay shemayim varts lasamti, I would never have established the world. So you see that the bris is referring to the karbanos. It says Vayomer Hashem Elokim b'ma'eda kiyarashem. We don't yet know that the karbanos are in control. Which is, if it wasn't for my bris, then there wouldn't be a world. But we don't yet know. We don't yet know that the bris has to do with karbanos. So it says Vayomer Hashem Elokim b'ma'eda kiyarashem. Avram asked Hashem, how do I know you're promising my children Eretz Yisrael? How do I know it's going to work out? Amar Avram Kadosh Baruch Hu, of course you'll keep your promise. But Shema Chas v'Sholom Yisrael Chaytim L'Fanecha, maybe Chas v'Sholom, my children are going to do Averis. Ba'ata Oisolem Kedar Mabel Kedar Flaga, and you're going to wipe them out like Kedar Mabel and Dar Flaga. And of course, even though Hashem made a promise that He would never wipe out the world, but maybe you wipe out part of the world. Amar Loi, Lav, Hashem said, no, that's not going to happen. Amar Lefanu Rebbeinu Shalom b'me'eda. How could I be sure? Amar Loi kechali egla mishuloshes. What does that mean? That means the Rebbeinu Shalom was telling him they're going to have karbonos. Rashi's kloimar hakarbonos yichaper aleim. The karbonos are going to be yichaper them. Now Rashi says b'me'eda. Avram Avinu wasn't questioning the integrity of the Rebbeinu Shalom. B'me'eda, the question was, Rashi says, Ma toimer li, can you please give me an eitzah? Avram asked. L'lamdon dover, to teach me a method, to teach my children a method, a strategy. My children will do averis. Can you give me a strategy what we could do to fix those averis? So Hashem said, they should bring karbanos.
That was the bris ben Absarim, wasn't it?
Yes.
So they didn't bring it. He didn't bring it as a korban. He cut it in half. That was a bris. It wasn't a korban.
But the reason why you use the animals as a bris is to signal that bringing animals will be a kapara. But I don't think that was actually a carbon. It was not.
They cut it out. You didn't treat it at all as a carbon. There doesn't seem to be even a hint that it's connected to carbonus.
It wasn't. It wasn't a carbon.
It wasn't. So how do you learn carbonus from it?
Because I mean they slaughtered animals, so I guess it was just like it was like a signal, a remnants.
Okay.
Basically, the point coming from the destruction of the world, the destruction of mankind, when is a no. You have to destroy all mankind. Just as we did the great storming, I'm taking it away from the contact.
I hear. Who says that? Are you reading that from somewhere? Oh, it's your svara. Very nice, beautiful. See, what Dr. Golder says is the Rosh Hashanah showing that I'll take out my kas on Eitzim Vavonim. It was a sign that animals can absorb the brunt of our problems. Amar Lefanav, Rebbeinu Shalom, Tenech B'zman Shebeis HaMikdash Kayim. That's very good when we have a Beis HaMikdash and we can bring karbanos. But what about B'zman She'ein Beis HaMikdash Kayim Matei Aleim? How are they going to have a kapara then? Amar Loi Kvar Tikanti Lahem Seder Karbanos. I was masaking for them Seder Karbanos, where they can say karbanos. Kozman Shekarin Bahen Maila Ani Aleim Kilu Makrivin Lefanai Karban. When you read the Parshas HaKarbanos and you understand the Parshas HaKarbanos, I'll consider it as if you brought the carbon. Moichel Ani Al Kol Avon Yisem, and I'll be moichel all their affairs. So the first one say, of course, from here you see you mamish have a chiyuv to say karbanos, because karbanos are what affects our kapara. The carbon tamid, and the Chofetz Chaim speaks out that imagine if you bring a carbon in the Beis Hamikdash and you have no clue of what you're doing. You have no clue of the halachas. It's going to be a disaster. What type of kapara are you going to have? So the Chofetz Chaim, it's not enough just to read the words of karbanos. We need to understand them thoroughly. We need to learn Maseches Zvachim. We need to understand thoroughly what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it, so that our reading of the karbanos can actually be the makom bringing the karbanos.
That's great. I mean, I really think that's all the time. Why don't we tell the kahanim that they have to read the karbanos?
Because the kahanim, when they're doing the avodah, they have to know the halacha. And Klal Yisrael has to stand over them and supervise them. That's what my mothers are, to make sure they do right. Yeah, we do. How you talking? Someone should bring your carbon and you're not making sure it's going to be brought properly. That's the whole sport of the mothers. Why do you have to be there? You're hiring someone to do a job for you. You're not going to check. You hire a subcontractor to do a roof for you. You don't check to make sure they're working perfect.
So when we get the Balkari names, right?
Right.
One Balkari names, Heshi names, and we all make sure that he doesn't make a mistake.
That's right.
And that's what we have to do in the county.
But the only way you could do that is if you know the halachas yourself. How are you going to make sure they're not making a mistake? But when we say karbanos, we're actually bringing the carbon ourselves. Right? Hashem gave us a way to virtually bring the karbanos ourselves.
So why would we ever bring the carbon?
I think it only works. I think it only works when there's no Beis Hamikdash. I think when there's Beis Hamikdash, we have to actually bring the carbon. Zok to Gemara. The tiniest, we lay in the brachas of klalos. The ein mafsik in the klalos. We know immediately. How do you know this? Amar Abchir Bar Gamda, Amar Abasi, Damar Kra. It says Musar Hashem b'ni altimos. I think that's a famous pirchei song. Reish Lakish Amar. Reish Lakish says L'vishayin Aimim Bracha Ala Paradim. So Musar Hashem b'ni altimos tells you that don't stop. If you're in the middle of getting a aliyah, don't stop in the middle, because then it's showing you that you can't tolerate. You don't want to hear the whole techocha. Rashi says over here, altimos. If you stop in the middle of the aliyah, you're showing that it's difficult for you to read the whole techocha. So Masechah Sofrim, they learn it from the second half of the pasuk, which says don't break up, don't make the techocha into little pieces. The reason why we have one long aliyah for the techocha, we don't stop in the middle, is you can't make a bracha on the paranis. So if you stop in the middle, then the person getting the second aliyah is going to be making, well, both people. The first aliyah is going to make asher nasan lanu on the paranis, and the person getting the next aliyah is going to be making asher bracha on the paranis. So how do you do it? Tana we learned kishu maschil the pasuk shalachnem, because now that you're not allowed to make a bracha on a paranis, so then you can't even start right at the chechacha. So therefore you have to start before. And the Mefarshim speak out, it doesn't mean literally the pasuk before, because usually the pasuk before is in a different parsha, and therefore you need to start at least 3 psukim before. And when you finish the Techacha, Messiah pasuk shel Achareim, you continue on a little bit, learning the new subject post the Techacha. Therefore, your brachas will be on the other parts that are not parades. Amar Abaye, lo yishanu ela b'klolei sheb'teres kahanim. These rules that we have, are only referring to the klolos in Vayikra. Of a klolos sheb'mishnah Torah, the klolos that are in Devarim, Poisek, there you could stop in the middle because they're not as potent, and we don't need to worry about them so much. Why? My timer, because halolu b'loshim rabim amuros. The klolos that are said in Vayikra, which are directly from the Rebbeinu Shloim, are b'loshim rabim, means applying to everybody. Moshe didn't make up his own klolos. Moshe was quoting from the Rebbeinu Shloim. So they're much more serious klolos. But Falolu, the klolos of Devarim are from Moshe Rabbeinu, the Loshen Yochid Amurais. They said the Loshen Yochid, Moshe Mipni Atzman Amram, and Moshe said them from himself. Let's see Rashi. Rashi elaborates on this. Moshe Mipni Agvur Amram, the Nasa Shliach Loimar, he was merely repeating what the Rebbeinu Shloim was transmitting. This is what the Rebbeinu Shloim told me. Sharei Amurin Beloshon v'nasati. So he's quoting Hashem as saying, "I will give." V'hefkadati v'shalachti. Who's doing all this? Meaning it's the Rebbeinu Shloim that's talking. Moshe is repeating the words of the Rebbeinu Shloim. Those are very serious quotes. It's third party. Moshe is saying Hashem will, not Hashem saying himself, "I will." Yad Beik Hashem. Moshe Amran Me'elav. Moshe was the one who said these klolos. In Tavra al Mitzvaysav, if you're going to be over on the mitzvahs of a Kadosh Baruch Hu Yafkid Aleichem, he is going to punish you. So therefore, those are not so severe. Therefore, those you could stop in the middle. I think we treat them the same anyway, but the Gemara saying technically wouldn't have to. Zok the Gemara weiter. Omar Levi Barbuti. Levi Barbuti said, "Have a curry become a gam game kamei Rav Huna va'aruri." I was reading the Teichacha in front of Rav Huna. The Kamagam Gem Rashi means I was learning it very quickly, which is how we learned it. We learned it quickly. Kamagam Gem Rashi is Karaisin b'Marutza v'Koish. I wrote them quickly. Baruri means b'Mishnah Torah. So I was reading the clothes quickly in Devarim. Omelo, he said, "Achanafshech, you have a problem with these clothes?" Means if you have a problem with the clothes, so then just take a break in the middle, stop in the middle. About the Kachbek, since I can see you're having difficulty reading the klolos, you're going fast, you're stuttering a little bit, so take a break. And you're allowed to take a break because, like we said a moment ago, it's only the klolos in Vayikra where you have to read them all at once. But here you have the option of stopping if you want. Tanya Rab Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Ezra Tikkun on Yisrael, Sheyukern klolos sheb'Torah kahanim koydem atzeres. Ezra was masakin that the order of the parishes will be that we lay the klolos in Vayikra before Shavuos. It's not before Shavuos, that's right. The Sheva Mishnah Torah and the klolos in the Devarim is before Kodim Rosh Hashanah. My time. What's the reason for this timing? We want that the year should end with its klolos, and the new year should be a year of only good things and happiness. I understand the klolos of Devarim, because they're right before Rosh Hashanah. Which we read before Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah is Shavuos a Rosh Hashanah? As a matter of fact, it is Atzeres Nami Rosh Hashanah. Atzeres is also a Rosh Hashanah in a certain way. If Nanu Batzeres al Peres Ilam. About Shavuos, there's a din on the Peres Ilam. So once again, Tichl Shana Klosa. Tanya Rab Shimon ben Elazar Omer. If the older people will tell you to break down a building, the Yeladim B'nai, yet the young people will tell you build it up. So let's say you have an old foundation, and the Kenim will say, take it down, don't build on this foundation is going to crumble. And the young say, no, it's good, you can build in there. So, sir, better off listen to the elders, the altivna, and don't build. Sometimes following the advice of the zakenim, of the elders telling us to break something down, that's actually the best practice for building. Sometimes when you're building, following the young and unexperienced, that will just lead to collapse. The siman Ladover and the siman for this concept is Rechavam ben Shlomo. What was the story of Rechavam ben Shlomo? When Rechavam ben Shlomo came into power, he wanted to exert his power, and they needed money. There was a big deficit. I guess they came after a liberal government. Maybe Shlomo Melech was a liberal government, and they were running out of money, so they needed money. So Rechavam wasn't sure what to do. Rechavam, on the one hand, the elderly people said, you better not increase taxes. I know you need money. You're going to have to find some way to lower the budget, but don't increase taxes. So the elderly were the conservatives, which is the way it always works, right? People, the biggest liberals, once they become older, and now they're on the bad end of the stick, they become conservatives. But the youth said, no, you have to exert your power and give them tax. You need the money, tax the people. Tax the rich. Let them pay their fair share, right? So Rechavam decided to listen to the young people. And what happened? It created a rebellion. Since he created a tax, basically the party split in half, and that opened up the Malchus Yisrael. Until then, Rechavam was the king of the whole Jewish community, and since he made too many taxes, the kingdom split into Malchus Yehuda and Malchus Yisrael. Why? Because he listened to the youth. Gewaltig. Tanur Mogam shemafsikin b'Shabbos Shachris, the place where we end Shabbos b'Shachris, meaning at the end of the parsha. Shom karim b'mincha. Shabbos b'mincha you learn the next week's parsha. B'mincha, where you finished off Shabbos b'mincha, which would have been Sheni. Shom karim b'Sheni, which means on Monday we don't read the first part of the parsha like we do. Rather, you would start from Sheni. B'Sheni, Shom karim b'Chamishi, and let's say you learned from Sheni to Shlishi on Monday. Then on Thursday, you would learn from Shlishi to Revi. And then, if you got up to Revi on Thursday, then come the next Shabbos, you don't have to learn the whole parsha, you can start from Revi. Divrei Reb Meir, that's where Reb Meir holds. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mokem shemafsikin b'Shabbos Shachris, Shom Karen b'Mincha u'b'Sheni u'b'Chamishi. Like Armani, we learned the first Aliyah only, both on for all three learning, Sai Shabbos b'Mincha, Sai Monday, and Sai Thursday. Shabbos Haba, next Shabbos, we start again from the beginning of the parsha. So the place where we finished on the first Shabbos, that's where we start Monday, Thursday, Shabbos B'Mincha, as well as the next Shabbos, which is our minute. Amar B'Zeir, Aloha Mokum Shemafsikin B'Shabbos Shachris, Sham Karin B'Mincha, U'B'Sheni, U'B'Chamishi, U'Shabbos Haba. Frank the Gemara, if that's the Aloha, why did Reb Zeir have to repeat the Aloha all over again? Why didn't he just say, V'Leim Aloha Reb Yehuda? All Reb Zeir had to say was, we paskin like Reb Yehuda. And Reb Yehuda told us that we lane from the beginning of the parsha, Sai Mincha, Sai Monday, and Sai Thursday. And for the Gemara, Mishum Da'af, they were people who twisted and told us that Reb Yehuda said the other way. Reb Yehuda says that you only start laning where you ended off last place, which is what Reb Meir said here. And since it wasn't clear what Reb Yehuda's shita was, what Reb Meir's shita was, when Reb Zeir wanted a paskin, he didn't just mention the name of the town he's paskin like, rather he reiterated what the halacha is, which is what we do, and that is on Monday, Thursday, Shabbos Mincha, we start from the beginning of the parsha, as well as next week, next Shabbos as well, we start from the beginning of the parsha. Okay, let's stop here. And Misham tomorrow, we're going to be making a seam, we're going to finish the Masechta, and Be'ezer Hashem will start Moed Katan tomorrow as well. So if the Olam has their Moed Katan Gemara prepared, we should probably bring them because hopefully we'll get a little bit of a start. What is? Oh, okay, I forgot it. So why don't you tell us?
Good.
Okay, Shkoyach, have a wonderful day. So remind me, please.
You read the said.